motion to bring the meeting back to order? Because I think we should. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, we are on 2.1, additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
There is an addition to the agenda. If you'll look at the last page, I'm asking
I
that,
think they have them.
oh, you don't have it. I'm asking that item 7.4, the appointment of an impartial hearing officer, be added to the agenda, please.
I'm so moved.
Okay. All those, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we are on to, because we just
Thank
did
you.
2.2, so we're now on 2.3. I have too many pieces of paper around here. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 16th and 13th regular meetings?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda recommended by the superintendent? It brings us from 3.1, the treasurer's report, 3.2, financial report, 3.3, consideration of claims, 3.4, transportation report, 3.5, cafeteria report, and 4.1, policy 2044.
I so moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have a really minor question I don't even know if Matt's going to know the answer to. Maybe get back to me. It really doesn't make any difference. It's just curiosity more than anything else. In the board packet, there was a January outstanding check for $600. It just seemed like usually those checks are short time frame or a small amount, so it just struck me as odd. And I wanted to demonstrate to you that someone actually looks at your board
Yeah,
packet.
I'd have to look specifically.
Yeah, I don't expect that you know that.
I could look into it.
Just curious.
It's probably, be careful, I don't want to,
Just go ahead and,
you know, it's probably a better than, you know, or a retiree for reimbursement check or something of that nature. It would generally run a little longer, but I can check for sure.
With that, can I have, we are on to vote for the consent agenda? All those in favor? Now we are on to 5.1. We have a king and king here. To
Paul Johnson.
Paul.
Hi, I was told to come up front to make sure I'm on video and capture all this correctly.
Yes,
Is this good right here?
it is.
Yeah, and Matt, you can.
Is this my good side? Yeah, thanks.
We'll fill in if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Great, thank you. So I'm here tonight to cover a couple items, and I'll cover them briefly, and then if you have questions, I can sort of infill from there, whether it relates to some of the project items we're talking about or the process. So I know you received a 2-page document that we recently put together. This is based on a overall project of $15.3 million. It will be broken into 3 phases to best align with your finances. So I think that was talked about at your last meeting. Since then, Pete and Matt met at my office, and we went through in detail the items that we know need to be done on the building to keep it functioning and safe, etc. So the way the phases break down is essentially phase 1 would be about, or would be 7.5 million, a maximum of 7.5, then 5.5, and the final one would be 2.3. So this is an example of how the scope of work could break down into those numbers. It's based on feedback from what we know about the building, and especially feedback from Craig about all of our opinions of what's going to last the longest versus what needs the most immediate attention. So the way it breaks down is phase 1 is really replacement of your heating system, a major portion of your heating system, replacement of your boilers, really a conversion from an old steam system to bringing the entire building up to a hot water system and getting rid of the old steam boilers. It will be much more efficient, and again would hold you for decades moving forward without having to worry about your heating system. The other piece of that, which I think is a real need here is the roofing. And so we would be able to address as much of the roofing as we can. You'll see with these phases, you have the full 15.3 at your disposal. And so we can buy as much as we can through the first phase, same with the other phases. So we'll buy as much roofing as allowed through that first phase. We're estimating that would be about 55% of the roof that we could complete of this building. So obviously we would address the areas that are currently leaks or areas that show signs of really going to be an issue sooner than the second phase. The second phase follows right along though, a year later, and we would complete the roofing at that point.
You're gonna have to explain to me as a non-architect, the 20% contingency, 20% incidental,
Yes.
and 22% installation. What do
Great
those
question.
mean?
Yes, please.
Great question. I know, because you see that line item and it's a large sum, right?
Yeah.
So this is a placeholder. It's intended to, honestly, to protect you. So when you go to a vote, a public vote, you're authorized to spend up to 15.3 million. You're also saying these, in general terms, these are the items we're fixing, you know, the heating, the roofing, et cetera. So these contingencies, first, the first 20% contingency is really a placeholder for us. There are a lot of things that we don't know about the building. The state education department doesn't allow us to design ahead of the referendum. That's sort of putting the cart before the horse in their eyes. So we have to have some buffer there. There are always discovered conditions. There are things we don't know about. And so again, it's protecting the budget so that we have a buffer in there in case we find we find a structural issue when we take the roof off. I mean, who knows what it could be, okay? 20% incidentals is a budget. That's sometimes people call it soft costs in different parts of the industry. That's essentially non-construction costs, things like your attorneys or the costs for bonds and financing. Our fees would be in that. Any other testing, like for instance, there's testing that would be done. If we were doing the roof, we would want to have roof cuts done in the roof so we could understand what the roof is made up of before we start designing or tear it off, for asbestos testing. So a lot of that falls in your soft cost budget. 20%, 20 to 25 is the range. We feel that 20% is a reasonable number for what we know about Hamilton and the types of fees that you're likely to see. Would also cover a construction manager or a clerk of the works when you get to that point. And that is someone who would oversee construction and would just make sure that contractors are performing what's shown on the drawings. And then that final piece, escalation, we're just talking about inflation. I don't know if any of you are linked to the construction industry, but right now in upstate New York, it's a boom. And so we're hearing continuously from electricians in particular that they can't get enough people, the halls are empty, the labor halls. We're also seeing inflation in prices just due to the amount of construction all happening at once. And this will continue over the next couple of years. So again, this is just us anticipating what inflation could be over the next couple of years and adding a factor on here. All these are intended to make sure that you can buy what you promised your constituents that would be done, bought and done to the building. If we don't use the money, great. That gives you a lot of options. One, if there's extra money, you don't need to spend it. You just can't spend over that amount. Two, it means you can get more done, and that's, you may hear me say a couple times, you can buy down the list. Meaning, say bids come in lower for the heating system, bids come in great for the roof, we're under budget, maybe we buy up to 75% of the roof in the first phase. Or there may be other items that come up. You know, this project potentially is spanning, the 3 phases would span about 3 years, so who knows what would come up or what, sorry Pete, but I know you're not here forever. But with a new superintendent, who knows what priorities or goals they might bring in, and I think there's some room in this budget that would allow some flexibility to be able to address things. So if there's some new educational incentives or programs you want to implement and it requires some changes to some rooms, I think we're going to find that we're going to be able to accommodate things like that. And so there's some flexibility built in there, but again, hopefully I explained it's all to make sure that we all deliver on what we've said we were going to deliver. So hopefully it wasn't too long-winded. So again, phase 2, replace the remainder of the roof, finish up that portion of it, and then a lot of infrastructure work, whether it's electrical work, both infrastructure and upgrades to LED lighting, or plumbing work, upgrades to piping and grease traps in the kitchen. None of it's exciting stuff, but it's all important, and it's gone a long time without being addressed. And again, in all of these, there's architectural support. So every time we rip apart a space to get some piping or something, we need to put it back together. Finally, phase 3 is starting to get into some more architectural upgrades, both interior and exterior. In particular, finally addressing the original 1950s locker room.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that.
Well, you know, it's historic.
Tradition.
Yeah, tradition.
It is nostalgic. You
So,
changed it.
And then again, along with keeping the water out by replacing the roof, we'll go through and address any masonry issues with repointing of the brick, any windows and doors that need to be replaced. So that brings us through the highest level items that were addressed initially to this building. Nothing at the bus garage, but it gets this building in a much better place. So that's the scope of work and how it breaks down. Again, there's flexibility in that. A referendum would vote on the whole thing, so it's all of the work. How that then gets sorted out afterwards, there's definitely some movement between phases, but we feel like this addresses the most critical things first. So I just wanted to talk briefly as well about the timeline and just make sure that this was clear. This is based on, we talked, Pete, Matt, and I talked about the goal of voting in December. And the reason for that is it gives us enough time, if it's a positive vote, it would give us enough time to design those items, submit it to the state education department, get their review and approval, which is a lengthy process. And so there are ways around that, and I don't want to get bogged down into different ways to get through that, but it builds in enough time for us to get that done and get to the bidding phase at an appropriate time where we're going to get the best bids. So that's typically the beginning of a year, January, February, March. That range is really the time when contractors are looking for work to line up for the next year, and we've always seen the best prices at that time. So it aligns you with that, and it also aligns you with the ability to do phase 1 construction starting in 2020, which is the target that fiscal advisors originally indicated. And then the other 3 phases would follow right behind that, again, allowing construction to start the next year. Each one of these phases is not so large that there shouldn't really be any overlap, so one should finish. The next one will be bidding. We may get the same contractors, we may get new people. And so you would essentially have 3 years of consistent construction here. Most of that happening over the summer. The rest of it would just be phased and organized to not interrupt what's happening within the building. And there's nothing so significant here that we can't work around what you're doing here without disturbing. There's always second shift and things like that, which is pretty typical, for plumbers. They may even want to get in on phase 1 and start doing some of the piping removal and the new piping, as long as it's not in spaces where others need to be. They may be able to work in the boiler room, et cetera, before school ends, which would give them a big jump to keep things moving. And in the end, we'll actually bring prices down. The sooner we do the work, even within a year, especially in a high inflation market, it's 2-year advantage. So, all that to say, the goal, as I understood it, was to a December vote. That means today I'm here to answer any questions about the scope of work or the process. At your next meeting on October 11th, to stay on pace, you would need to, between now and that meeting, actually, your attorneys would have to put together what's called a secret resolution and a project resolution. So a secret resolution is just simply, it's the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And so you're just meeting your obligations to the state that you've reviewed the work, you've checked in with other agencies if it applies, and they will also say that you're acting as the lead agency. For work that we're talking about, which is just replacement of existing systems and materials, there really is no impact. So it would be a type 2 that you're passing, and it really, it's the easiest, lowest threshold of all the types. If you were doing something more dramatic, especially a lot of site work, then it may pull in other agencies who would want to understand what you're doing, whether that be the DEC and potential impacts on the river, or the stream, or whatever it is behind the school, or otherwise. A big piece with that is also stormwater runoff and just the containment on the site. So we're not really doing any of that though, so it's a pretty simple resolution that you would pass. That needs to be done before the project resolution, but literally like within the same meeting is fine, just do them in that order. The project resolution just literally your attorney will take this scope of work and just write up a paragraph that roughly explains what the public will be voting on, set the date. He'll identify the financing and how that all works out. And so it's, it's a wordy paragraph, but it's essentially what the public would see, and so that they understand what they're voting on. So both of those really need to happen at the October meeting because the secret process requires a 45-day waiting period before you would actually vote. So if we waited to your November meeting, it would push us into 2019. So that also gives, so from October to whatever that date may be in December, we recommend early to mid-December so you have successful votes then. But between October and then, it gives you a great opportunity to do some PR work, especially Pete meeting with Matt, meeting with all the various groups within the community. It's that footwork from you guys locally, we've always, no matter the district, it always pays off, that extra effort to go meet with the seniors, so go to Madison Lane, go to any of the other groups, and even the subgroups within your school community here. It really does pay off. I don't think it's going to be hard to sell to your teachers that you need a new roof. I think they're on board. Especially the ones with the leaking ones. So anyways, so the vote, based on that October 11th meeting, if you pass those resolutions then, you literally can set your vote date anytime after Thanksgiving. So that's the process getting up to a vote. So that's, I want to be clear about that. Anything else I can answer?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't understand the math that I'm looking at. For example, phase 1,
Yeah.
construction total 4261, $4,261,000, and then the contingency. Does that add up to 62%? Is that? I'm trying to understand.
Oh, so it's because of the way it all built, I see what you're getting. We use a 1.76 multiplier. But that's what, if you multiply, so if you do the math,
Yeah.
and you take the 4.261, you multiply it by 20% to get the contingency, then you put the escalation on that, and then you put the incidentals on that number.
Okay.
So it's 3.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
compounding.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
that's why, okay.
So that's where, if you crunch that, the multiplication factor is 1.76.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Sue, I hope you're happy.
All right.
Just a crazy
Yeah.
question, I'm sure it has
Yeah,
to do
go
with
ahead.
the time and stuff, but what we've heard about over and over and over again is the roof, and that's the biggest problem, that leaks the most. And if you total up the entire roof project that's less than the first phase, why don't we just do the whole roof and make sure that we have it fixed?
Right, so I think what we're looking at doing which phase the heating system fit in the best. But I think that could be up for discussion. I think Craig had some strong opinions about that, and Craig definitely thought the heating should be in the first phase, plus the roofing. And we will be addressing the worst roof areas. And we know your roofs pretty well, and there are definitely larger sections that are reaching the end of their useful life, but not at critical stage yet.
I know that this building's a whole lot different than any house I've ever, but it seems to me the minute we mess with something, we mess up something else, so we're
Yeah.
gonna mess with the roof to me.
Yeah, so the roof is, I mean, if you look at a Google map of your building, it's segmented in areas. There's very clear defined breaks from when additions were added over the years, whereas other roofing areas broke it up. So there are areas where it is very easy to start and stop. We would not recommend, going partway across an open area and stopping. We would take it all the way to the next wall or expansion joint or whatever clear delineation is that. So we would absolutely make sure, and it's one of our big goals, is to make sure that the way it's being phased and rolled out is in your best interest. And our goal is always, and our focus is always thinking long-term about the best product. I mean, we're talking about a roof that should easily last 30-plus years. So it's not something that you have to worry about for a long time.
And so I'm assuming these have all been looked into and that Craig's already done this. So there's parts of the roof that are not leaking at all that we're okay with. Because to me, the water damage happening from a leaky roof is the thing that you want to prevent. Boy, heating system is unfortunate, we don't like it, but it's not causing damage while that gets delayed by year. This roof is being pushed out to 21.
Yeah, you definitely have roofs that are not, again, they're reaching the end of their useful life, and we're trying to be proactive. So they haven't failed yet. So you do have a good portion of your roof that is not an immediate issue.
Okay.
But certainly falls in the guidelines of what the state education department would say should be on your radar to be replaced within a 5-year window.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Paul.
Great.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
We are to 6.1. I invite the public to come to the front. We don't have the microphones on at the moment, but please speak up and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody that'd like to come, make some hands. With that, we move to 7.1. We have appointments. Can I have a motion to appoint the head bus driver, Lorna
Simchick.
Simchick, sorry. The sublist for Samantha Conklin, extracurricular advisors, the fall play advisors.
Also moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Do I need to identify that one of the members on this list is a family member? I mean, just as a
I see that.
matter of
Yeah, that's why I
course.
thought we were doing them individually, because I would typically abstain from that, the extracurricular advisory list. But if we do them all together, then I'm abstaining from the whole.
So I
Do we need to?
Or- I understand Alan's question, I understand your position.
I think I we just have to point out that it's there. I don't know that it's a conflict of interest per se. It just need to point out that it's obviously there.
That's why typically I don't.
Yeah,
vote.
let's do
That's
it,
not a question.
let's do it individually. Let's do maybe the head bus driver and the sub. Let's
Okay.
have that one first, yeah, and then we'll.
So we'll break it up for the head bus driver and the sublist, man.
So I'll make a motion for the appointment of Lorna Simchick and the sublist.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
I do just want to add that I did get fingerprint clearance for Lorna Simchuk today. So
Okay.
she's fine.
May I have a motion for the extracurricular, co-curricular advisors, a motion to approve the following, which I don't have the list of.
They're on board.
They're on board docs, recommended by the principals and the superintendent.
So that's separate from the fall plan.
Yes.
So we can move on that, I'll move on that one.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
May I have a motion for the fall play advisors? The fall 2018-19 fall play will be Murder on the Nile, recommended by the superintendent and secondary principal.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain from that one then.
We're on
I know.
7.2. May I have a motion to approve the recommendation of the committees on special education and preschool special education?
Move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the master's trip to New York State Theater Education Association Student Conference on July 11th through the 13th, 2019, as recommended by the secretary principal and superintendent.
January.
What did I say? Oh, yeah, January.
We're
It says January.
good.
So yes, motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All those, any discussion?
Yes. I just want to be clear, it says that it's $200.80 per student. Is that paid by the student and or family, or is that paid by the district?
That is paid by the students and their family.
Thank you.
I also want to note that the Board of Education reserves the right to cancel the trips if circumstances should arise concerning the safety of the students. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the NYSSMA convention trip to the Rochester Convention Center from November 29th through December 2nd, as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent?
Move.
Second.
Any discussion? I'd also like to note the Board of Education reserves the right to cancel the trip if circumstances should arise concerning the safety of the students. All those in favor?
Aye.
7.4. I knew there was something in there. Can I have a motion to appoint Martin Keough as the impartial hearing officer at a rate of $100 per hour and travel reimbursement at the IRS rate as recommended by the superintendent?
Second.
Any discussion?
Nodding doesn't work.
I just give you some information. We received another demand for an impartial hearing, and dealing with one of our students with an IEP. And when that happens, we are required to go to a list and go through a process, select and offer an opportunity for an impartial hearing officer. Mr. Keough accepted, and I can appoint, I can't believe with the authority that I was at the board. So that's where we're at this point. There are other procedures that we will follow as we go.
All those in favor? 8.1, board president's report. It's not really a report, but we are going to discuss our goals. What we've done is we want to get moving on actually having goals this year, because the board did not have goals the last 2 years, I think it is. So what we've done is I've asked Corey to bring up a draft, write up a draft of the goals as a starting point for us as a board. We received these yesterday, so we have not put a lot of time into looking at them, but I will let Corey take off from there.
Sure, I just want to walk you through kind of my thinking on this. So I looked at some of our past goals from past years, and they seem pretty similar in their scope. And so what I thought is different for us this year is obviously we are searching for a superintendent and in the process of implementing a strategic plan. So I thought, how do I work those into these other goals, and realize that they're not really working at cross purposes. In fact, they're pretty aligned with some of the goals in the past. So I tried to incorporate this under this vision of what is it that we as a board can and should be doing as far as the strategic plan goes. There's a lot of the strategic plan that's not the board's duty, and we obviously have an implementation team. But there are things I think we can be doing to help support that. And so that's where this kind of goes through. So of course, the first goal being that we should be hiring a superintendent that can implement this strategic plan by 2023. So if somebody has that vision going through that, that's our first goal that obviously we're working on as we speak. The second is to make sure that we as a board are promoting the vision, mission, beliefs, and parameters that are outlined in the strategic plan. Part of those being, and I've kind of broken that, what we can do in there, part of it being that we are making sure that people know that we have a mission statement, right? If there's a mission statement that is clearly outlined in the strategic plan that we've adopted as a one that was adopted in February, and it's to educate every student every day, right? And so what are the steps that we can take as a board to make sure that people know that? And the other two parts of that are making sure that there's consensus around this existing, what we accepted as the parameters, the vision, the mission, the beliefs, that there's consensus that people think those are right? We've accepted this, that this is what it is, the strategic plan, planning committees have come up with these. Now it's our job to make sure that everybody's on board with that. And then the other half of that is making sure that people believe that that's really what's happening at the school, right? And so that we can show that the vision, mission, beliefs, and parameters really do exemplify what's happening at school and where the school is moving. And then the third goal here kind of just looks at what are the things that we can be doing within each of the 4 areas of the strategic plan that are outlined with the specific tasks. And again, like I said, there's specific tasks in there that we are not responsible for as a board, but I think there's things we can be doing. So in dynamic academic culture, we should be monitoring the progress, the curriculum is being developed in a proper way that meets the needs of our diverse student bodies, and that included in that is progress toward implementation of our response to intervention system. This is the one that I mostly struggle with because there's a lot in there. So if anybody has any further suggestions as you look through the strategic plan, I'd be happy to see, is there something else we should be elaborating in there? Technology was a little cut and dry, also because I was on the task force that worked on that, so I kind of knew that one already. But there are 2 very specific things that it seems like there needs to be, and in fact, the strategic plan calls for those to be done by fall of 2018. Or at least this first one is to have an outlined mission for a technology committee, which I believe exists, but I'm not sure at what stage that's at. And then to devise survey to understand the survey attitudes for technology on campus, which that second one could be done, I think, sometime soon. Doesn't necessarily in the fall. And so I believe that's been moving.
Yeah.
And then with faculty and staff, make sure that we're working. And I think this is something that's not necessarily in the strategic plan explicitly, but maybe the goal of the board is to make sure that we can recruit and retain our outstanding faculty and staff. And what are the steps that we can take working with our superintendent and other administrators? How can we keep them, keep our great people here and recruit the best that we can to fulfill their positions? And then I think D is probably one of our biggest challenges is being more involved in that family and community engagement, more clearly communicating with the outside, with our entire learning community. And I think that includes, as it says before, but restated here, making sure that we are kind of the cheerleaders for the mission, vision, beliefs, and parameters of that strategic plan. And then the other 2 things that don't fall within the strategic plan, but definitely are the job of the board, are number 4, making sure that our policies that are in place are adequate and helpful to implementing the plan as effectively and efficiently as possible. And then the fifth is on the bottom line, because it is the bottom line, which is making sure that we are fiscally responsible and that we're providing the correct support, not only for the strategic plan, but also so looking for our immediate needs, but also looking long-term, that we're thinking of capital projects like the one we just talked about, but also down the road, making sure that we don't get in situations where we're behind on capital projects again. How can we make sure that fiscally and financially, the district is gonna be in good shape, no matter what else comes up? So, that's my thinking on those.
Thank you,
Yeah.
especially for taking the first go at it. Initial thoughts?
I mean, I like it, I like the way it aligns with the strategic plan, I think that's good. My only thought, and this comes from years of looking at these goals and objectives and stuff, is that on number 3, I think we kind of get more into my first thought is more into the weeds, and that's not what I mean. I think we get more into the specifics than we necessarily have to by going each of those. I mean, I think our job is just like what you say right in the beginning, monitor the general progress of the implementation team. It's the implementations team to do those other things. We should be monitoring them, make sure they stay on them. I get concerned when we detail that we're going to get involved in these things. I'm not, and I'm open to be told I'm wrong. I'm just not sure these are the things that we're supposed to be doing. It's what we're supposed to be making sure the implementation team and the administration does.
Right.
So I would just stop it, I would just put a period at, the Board of Education provides support and leadership for each of the 4 areas of the strategic plan, period. And where they go may be very different than we see them going now also. So I think that also puts more appropriately in place who's supposed to be doing it, and gives us more of the flexibility to kind of respond to where they go.
What I would say is, I think, other than the technology, which is pretty specific, the other 30, I don't think they're necessarily laid out in the strategic plan, especially faculty and staff and engagement. Those are not things that are necessarily in the strategic plan, although I'm sure this works well. But what I see is this is the things the board can be doing, and should be doing that aligns with those, especially those second 2 goals. Like I said, the first one we can kind of probably tweak in different ways, and technology is pretty specific, but I think it's kind of cut and dry what needs to be done.
Again, I agree with every one of these things on here. I'm just not sure that we should be stating that we're doing that as much as it's stated here. That's the only difference. I mean, everything that's said, I agree with. So, especially the technology committee. God, please, can we, especially the technology committee, can we please define exactly what we're doing, where we're going, and what that is. We're much better off now than we were earlier, but still need help.
Yeah.
So if everybody could, if everybody could get thoughts, if you have more written thoughts, to Corey, in plenty of time for him to process before the October meeting, that would be good, and then maybe we'll be ready at that point to.
So Corey, what does in plenty of time mean to you? Give us a date.
What's the date of the October?
11th.
What day of the week is that?
11th is a Tuesday, or Thursday. Thursday.
Yeah, we get it to me the weekend before.
That's fine. That's fine.
That is it.
6.
The only thing you may want to push that back a little bit, if you want us to be able to see it before the
Well, that's
meeting,
true. So maybe a weekend before that weekend.
or that Wednesday before, or something like that, I don't know.
Or can you want to give us time to have it posted, whatever you're revising?
All right, by the 1st,
October
to
1st.
Corey,
Mhm.
and then Corey
Do what you did by
to the
sending it out.
5th,
Yeah.
to Debbie.
And if the meeting's on Thursday, I'll have it on the weekend.
Well, we want to post it, no later than Tuesday, because we're not
Okay.
changing things after.
You can have a weekend.
Just don't say anything yet, just hold us to the fire. We're trying to.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
May I go first on the administrator report?
You may.
Usually I don't. I want to pick up, I'm waiting for the board to adopt goals. Okay, so we want to see what you're going to adopt. We've been talking about implementing the strategic plan with each group starting, I mean, they're going. You remember, I think last month I put a report on the priorities. And I would like us to start administratively with our staff, our resources with the community, to really start that and keep you apprised. So we're ready to do that. I'm not looking to wait for the next superintendent. I want you to know. So we're structured now. I think we've had enough big group meetings. I think we're ready to go and look at Kevin and Bill and Mary, just know on board. Okay, and then we'll keep you going. So I'm gonna wait for you to adopt before we. Okay? Second thing I just wanted to bring up is we had a concern raised, and I think I sent you some emails about physical education at the elementary level. And only yesterday I became aware of this. We're looking at ways that we can meet those regulations. I want you to know. Questions have come up about continuing to videotape our meetings. Should we videotape or not? And I'm looking into that. I'm trying to figure out how it began. Is it the will of the board to continue? What are other districts doing? Have they ever been in this situation? And I'm being open about it. I want to look into it and come up with a recommendation. So I'm trying to see what the consensus is, build consensus, and go from there. The last one is, and I talked with HTA Advisory, Holly was there, Lori Coddington, and Zach, about the concept of the board advisory, and now we have 2 board members with the association advisory. I don't have any more thoughts than that, other than we've talked about it, and the association would like to see that continue. I'm looking into some things there. I know the association would like to see it continue, and I'm continuing to wrestle with, when you have a superintendent, what happens and what's the voice to the board. I don't have that yet. I think we're holding things in abeyance at this point. Is that fair to say? So I can look into some things. I would not do anything without working with the association. But right now, I think we're in abeyance. We have the superintendent's advisory that we're meeting regularly and trying to work together on things. So I think that's my report, unless, did I miss anything? Looking at Kevin, Bill, or Mary, Matt? Good. With that, Mary's here, Kevin, Matt, Bill, you want to give a verbal report this time because things got changed?
Sure. Just some good news to report first off. Our 3A testing scores in math and ELA are embargoed right now, so the public can't have them yet. But I know the results, and they look great, and I just wanted to share that. We're up about 10 percentile proficiency points in both ELA and math, which is a pretty good feat for 1 year. I don't know what the state increased yet, so I don't know how that compares, because I'd like to compare the two, but I'll have a full report of that at the next board meeting. With that, I'd also like to say that our accountability data, which got us on the focus district list the last 3 years, looks great as well too. We achieved all of our goals in our subgroups, and everything looks really good. So I'll have a full report for you that on the next board meeting. If anyone hasn't seen, we have a pre-K through 12 back to school bash Thursday. That's right leading up to our open house. I put out an email tonight because we did notice that it said K through 12 on the flyer that went out, and we want to be aware that our pre-K students are certainly invited. So I invited all of our pre-K families tonight and just let them know that was a mix-up in the flyer. So we have the bash. We actually have 4 things going on. We have the bash, and we have our AIS RTI testing information night, which is required by law in New York State. They have once a year, so that is going on from 6:15 or from 5:30 to 6:15, and then we have our regular open house from 6:30 to 7:30, and then we also have the book fair going on during the entire time. So I hope to see the whole community out there. Should be fun. Kids are already talking about it. And then just lastly, the SSAE grant for the after-school programs that we received. We finally, on August the 14th, received notification. It was official. We got our first allotment of money. We immediately put out an advertisement, have been taking in resumes, and tomorrow the steering team and I, made up of Camden people and Hamilton people, will be interviewing for a project coordinator. Our goal is to have by mid-October, some information out to the public about what we will be offering. And then in November to start offering courses. That's a pretty ambitious goal. I hope to be able to do that for everyone. But there'll be more information going out to the community once we have our project coordinator hired, and that's part of his or her responsibility to communicate with the communities of both Camden and Hamilton. So anxious to get that started.
To accommodate our back-to-school bash, we've combined our open houses. Typically, they're on 2 separate days, secondary and elementary. To make this a pre-K through 12 bash, we combine our open houses. So that'll be, as Kevin said, on Thursday. More good news, we have 2 students that will be recognized in the forum tomorrow morning as National Merit Semifinalists scholarship winners. Heather is here, Tara Gerlu, and Rose Porter will be recognized tomorrow morning as National Merit Semifinalists. That was embargoed until tomorrow morning, so that's great news. We've got a great opening and things are good.
Is it okay to tell?
It's okay to tell. Yeah.
Congratulations to
Make sure he's at formal.
Dressed well.
No.
Matt, Mary, any thoughts, Mary? You've been
Yeah,
here a long time now.
I
A month or two.
No, it's been a great, amazing experience so far. It was great all summer long. I worked really hard on over 10 state reports that were due to the state, and everyone, all the administrators supported me and trying to get all the information together. So I'm happy before all the reports are into the state, so that's a good thing. I was really thrilled to see the kids coming in. I was a principal, so for me, working in the summer without seeing a lot of kids was a change. So I was really fortunate to see all the kids come in together. Amazing with K-12. I'm not used to building with that range of ages, and so that was really nice. And the staff did an amazing job welcoming all the kids with the balloons and the T-shirts, and it was just a great event. We're really fortunate to have the staff that we do. They're just incredible. We've been working a lot in special education, a lot of the new special education students that we've been receiving, getting all their meeting intakes done, so we're off to a great start, and we're very good.
Just briefly, I'm sorry I had to step out, but the appointment of Laura Simchek as our head bus driver, very happy with that. I think she's going to be a great addition to our team. I just want to thank really everybody, support staff, teachers. It's been a challenge the last couple of weeks with transportation, being a little bit short-handed, but I think our drivers have done a pretty good job adjusting. We made some significant changes in routing, and then really got a lot of information at the last minute, which caused a lot of significant changes. So we've been trying to address all concerns and get back to people in a timely manner. The people within the building have been wonderful, so it's starting to stabilize. So, but Lauren will be a wonderful addition.
I don't think I missed anyone. So we did the superintendent up there,
Yeah, one tied to strategic plan, that's what I jumped.
right? So now it's time for participation from the community. If you'd like to come down, please come down and speak loudly. And please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, Jen Jones. I just wanted to publicly announce that the PTO meeting has been pushed back a week. We were recently made aware that it was also the date of the HTA meeting, so we definitely don't want to have any conflict with that. So it has been pushed back to September 19th at 3 o'clock in the elementary library.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm learning that the executive session is not needed. So at this time, unless there's something else that anybody else does, at this time, I have a motion
Move to adjourn.
There we go.
Second.
Woo-hoo. All those in favor?
I know it's rare. It was a rare German, I was all for this.